Do the Japanese people speak like those that you see in the anime? No. Hello there, my name is Ame Gakita. One of the funny questions that I tend to get asked in real life and in my live stream is that do Japanese people get to speak like those that you see in anime? Simply, I will actually always say no. Well, I'm going to tell you guys the reason. You can take it that it's my own opinions or speculation. So with that being said, let's just step into it. One of the things I would tell people is that when we say Japanese language, it's similar to how we say people can able to speak English. When we say everyone can speak English, well, not every single one, but when we actually do say people can speak English, there are actually differences when it comes to the word English. We know that there is the UK English, there is also the US English, we know that there is Canada, we know there is Australian, there is the Southeast Asia type. So there are many different types of English, so that when you do Google search and you just type English and translate to which country, there are many different types of English in general. So it's actually not wrong to point it that in Japanese language is similar. So what's the difference? In fact, if you actually look at Japan have many different prefixes, which mean like different part of Japan like Hokkaido, Kyoto, Kyushu, Okinawa, because there are so many parts of Japan. So what makes Japanese language different? It's actually more towards the point of that because they are living quite far away, you can actually take a look at that some of their Japanese can be actually unique to their own place or the city. It's actually more towards the dialect and accent of that specific place. But at the same time, because you don't really hear most of the different words individually from different places when you are in Japan. So even in anime, when we actually say that anime do actually point out a few accents, like the most common being used is Kansai Bang. If we actually look at Kansai Bang, which is a combination of Kyoto or Kyoto, depending on how you pronounce it, Osaka, and Hyugo and a few other places, a lot of people didn't realize that in Osaka and Kyoto, although they do use a similar word of okini, which means arigato gozaimasu or thank you, Kyoto got the words that is unique to Kyoto people, just like how people actually didn't know that the parking lot in Osaka is also normally called as Motopulu or Motopu. So there are actually a lot of words that is unique to different part of Japan and not being commonly used in the general Japanese people. So it actually more close to the part that there are different form of Japanese even within Japan itself. So if you do come across a few people in Japan and you can actually ask them that when it comes to Japanese language, is there any difference between places to places, or just like how Kyoto Japanese is different to Osaka or Osaka different from Tokyo, Saitama? Reason number two, you guys might actually find it a little bit surprisingly, or maybe not. Do you actually have a script in front of you and when you're having a conversation with anyone in front of you every single time? Well, definitely I don't. Well, maybe when you're giving out a speech, you want to have a piece of paper right in front of you and you are reading out the script. But in fact, anime Japanese, what a lot of people might not be aware is that when the characters are being voiced, they have a script or a piece of paper with lines indicating the voice actor or the actresses to read individual word to word, line to line. So the one thing that a lot of people might not be aware is that reading off something versus reading by your mind is actually two different things. Because what you might not be aware is that when reading off the script, you are reading words to word and you are reading it fast because you know what you're going to read words to word, line to line. But as in real life, sometimes we have to think carefully of what we are saying. And even if we don't think and we just say things out, it doesn't mean that the thing sometimes have to make logical sense. But in anime, they are actually reading things that is already being predetermined. Whereas communication in real life, it doesn't mean that it's going according to the script. So reason number two that a lot of people tend to not realize is that you don't really have a script in real life. What made anime Japanese and other Japanese language different is that anime Japanese itself is actually written by the author or the writer according to what they feel it should be. So it's not like we actually got every time when I go out or when you go out to speak with your friend finally or anyone and you're having the same conversation as what you're going to like have a piece of paper in front of you and you're going to say whatever that is coming out of the piece of paper. reading off a piece of paper actually is really different from not reading off a piece of paper. So if you do think that Japanese language is easy, I would suggest you to rethink carefully about reading off a piece of paper first versus reading on your mind. Reading off through a piece of paper is much easier as you are reading as words to word, line to line, and even best because you are looking at the word itself and what is being written on the piece of paper, you are aware of what you are saying. Whereas when you are having a conversation in real life and in Japanese, sometimes you have to not make use of thinking or looking at the words. In fact, you are actually going to use your ears to listen carefully on what the person is going to say. Where in script, you don't really think because everything what you're going to say is based on that piece of paper. So, well, maybe some people might actually say, because I have to make sure that the person say the last line and then I have to read next line accordingly. The thing is, right, when it came to real life, you have to use your ears and mind at the same time to comprehend what the person is saying. And sometimes in Japanese, a lot of people is not aware is that some words can have double meaning. Just like how a lot of Japanese people don't really like Kyoto people, is that in fact a lot of people is not aware is that in Kyoto, most Kyoto people speak, the way they speak have double meaning. I will leave that as a video for next time. Sometimes when we speak in Japanese, there are some people who love to go in a roundabout way or way that people might not understand. So you have to be very careful that some word in Japanese does have double meaning and it can also mean and the other way. So you have to be very careful when that actually happens. Okay, reason number 3, if really I have to push for it, in anime, you hardly hear the polite form of Japanese. And what is a polite form of Japanese? In a nutshell, I will actually use the word mas form and the des form. Normally, if you hear the word like tabemasu, nomimasu, or like watashi desu, kochira desu, although you might actually hear some of them in real life, the desu and the mas, but not a lot of people is aware that in anime Japanese, they are tend to be used towards the casual form. The casual form of tabemasu became taberu. Nomimasu became nomu, which is a whole new different form. Textbook Japanese, like Mina no Nihongo, normally the first way that foreigner people learn Japanese is actually by polite form instead of casual form. Because when you start speaking to people in Japanese, most of the people who learn are already mostly in the later years of their life or maybe youngest. When a lot of people learn Japanese by the textbook, it tends to show towards polite form first. Whereas in Japan, when young kids start learning words, they actually start from the casual form. And if you actually watch a lot of anime, a lot of the anime tend to use the casual form more than the polite form. Casual form is tend to be used between friends and family, whereas polite form is tend to be used between strangers or people who they first acquainted. So for example, if you do come across some Japanese people and they use the mas form and the des form more, is that it's actually not wrong for them because they are being polite and they are using the word to give you the respect, to give you the hospitality, try not to offend you. So they tend to use the word. So often more than not, they will actually use the polite form more than casual form. Casual form, like I mentioned, is tend to be used between friends and family. So when you do get close to a Japanese people and they are comfort with talking with you as a friend, they will then use the casual form together with you. But there are also another situation where I don't need to use polite form against some specific people, will be people who are younger than me. For example, I'm speaking to a younger person. I can actually either use polite form or casual form. If I'm speaking to people who is older than me, it's more correct for me to use polite form against them unless they requested it. I actually do ask a few of them between casual form and polite form, which is easier. In fact, to the Japanese, because they have been using casual form since young, they are actually more comfort with using casual form more. If you do have the chance to speak a younger generation of the Japanese, you will notice the way the younger generation people speak and the adult or later stage of life Japanese people, the way they speak is really, really different. When you compare this to anime Japanese can be written by anyone. It can be also be written by young people. It can be written by older people. It is only tend to be written by one person with the conversation in that person's mind. It doesn't really reflect the whole general Japanese. Reason number 4, the modernization of Japanese language words. So basically what happened is that some Japanese words actually have been so-called removed due to the words of being simplified or being ease of use. Let's say for example, in olden times, supermarket in some place do use the full word supermarketo. But because super is much easier to pronounce, it became a common theme that in Japan, super or supermarket is actually much better to convert, even though when it's based off the first 2 letters super, because pronouncing marketo at the end seems a little bit weird. In other situations, like words that already have a Japanese meaning or Japanese word itself, let's say for example casual, in Japanese the olden way of saying it is actually nanigenai or kenkai na, which both mean casual. But in recent time, casual became the norm because not only is it much easier to pronounce, it's also using Romaji version, which is much easier to remember. Whereas nanigenai or Keikai na got a kanji itself, so basically not a lot of people would tend to use that often. Some people still use it in modern time, but it's just that because people tend to use the simple way out, that's why most of the words itself had just been eliminated or became not commonly used. Most of the writers tend to use the modernization Japanese words like what I mentioned earlier, and that it became a norm for the reader to use those words of themselves too. It just became a common theme for Japanese authors to just use the simple words so that it can get click with the modern readers, and that it became much easier for the reader to understand the story as a whole. So it's not really that those words just got so-called eliminated. Those words that I mentioned earlier still exist and is still used at some part of Japan or some people. Just you might not hear them often more than the other words that is commonly used in the general public. So it depends, because if you think about it, if you got a choice between an easy to remember word and a hard to remember word, which one will you actually tend to use more and which one will you actually go for it more? Even I myself will use the casual more than the word keikana or nanikenai, because not everyone tend to use the Japanese version more. It's just that more people tend to use the Romaji version because it became a norm for the Japanese to start learning English words, and that one of the way for them to understand English words is through by Romaji itself. So it's not uncommon to even see younger generation tend to use Romaji Japanese more than the Japanese word itself. Final reason, if I have to give out, definitely would be the pronunciation of the Japanese language. It shouldn't come as a surprise to even anyone is that in Japan, not everyone pronounces the same word as you might think, even though the base is there. Let's say for example, sa and sha, both of them are different words with different pronunciation, but it can also get mispronounced the same way. If you're unable to hear the right word carefully, it can mean a whole new thing. Even one of the common thing that I actually get mistaken myself would be 有字 and 用字. So it depends on the situation or some pronunciation that can sound so similar. Another funny thing that I've ever mispronounced in my life would be in and in. One is actually go to the hospital, another one is go to the barber. And yes, I got sent to the barber when I actually wanted to go to the hospital. And so often more than not, I have to pronounce, like, for example, if I say, like, if I want to go to the barber, I have to say like kami no kiri no in. If not, if I want to go to see a doctor, I say byoki dakara in ikitai desu. Like, I have to specifically say the description at times so that it will not cause any misunderstanding if I ask someone for direction. But other than that, some pronunciations are so close to each other and giving different meaning that sometimes what you might not be aware is that some people pronounce some words are very precise to the point that it can actually cause misunderstanding or people learning it the wrong way. Another common question that I do ask is that the mas and the des, the s at the end of those words, do you pronounce the s or do you pronounce it as a s silent? In fact, both are technically correct and there is no correct way of saying both are wrong or right. There are some Japanese people that I come across pronouncing the words arigato gozaimasu, and there are also some people who just say arigato gozaimasu, which you can just hear the s at the back but not the su word itself. So it doesn't mean that both are correct or wrong, it's just that it depends on the person who pronounce it and some people who say it. So you might even come across some people who pronounce the word Kyoto or Kyoto due to the first letter being a key itself, but it doesn't mean both are wrong. In fact, both are technically technically correct. It just depends on who actually pronounce it, from where they are or who they are. So if you do come across some people who pronounce the word Kyoto or Kyoto itself, both are technically correct, but the common way that I actually tend to hear would be definitely Kyoto. Those are the 5 reasons that I can come up with that why anime Japanese are different from what you might think, and that why Japanese people don't speak like those that you see in anime. That doesn't mean that you should not learn Japanese language from anime itself. In fact, it is actually encouraged by some people. Even my Japanese sensei do encourage me to watch more anime as a mean to learn Japanese language. I do like anime myself, so at times I actually tend to read manga to learn new words or watch anime to understand more by listening to the Japanese. So if you really want to hear how a Japanese person do speak in real life, I would actually recommend watching YouTuber stream or maybe VTuber like Hololive or Holostar member and understand the way they and their method of speech, the pacing and the way they reply to each other. It doesn't mean that you need to understand what they say, as long as you understand the pacing and getting used to the Japanese word itself. Learning new words they take time. It's not like everyone, even the Japanese, understand Japanese on the day they are born. It takes them years and years of getting used to the language to understand the word itself. So do not get discouraged just because you can't learn Japanese within a short time. Even I take around 6 years to learn Japanese and understanding them, and yet I'm still learning new words and understanding new meaning of new words. So if you really like anime and you really want to learn Japanese, go ahead and watch more anime and understand more Japanese and learn from it. However, my suggestion is that do not try to speak like those that you see in anime to a general public in Japan. It is more recommended to learn some textbook Japanese to understand the right meaning and the way to use those words and understand how those words are being used in the actual form before using it in public. You can even Google search some of the meaning if you are really unable to understand. Anyway, comment below whether you agree or disagree, and let me know more about your experience on learning Japanese, as well as the time that you communicate with Japanese people in real life, and let me know more interesting stories so that I may share it in my live stream. Make sure to press the like button and subscribe for more future random videos. With that being said, if you are watching this in the morning, have a good day. If you are watching this at night time, have a good night rest. We will talk again in the next video or live stream.